So, Greg, Terry, and I have been talking about the same thing from different angles about how the Russians and Iranians are on the same page. And it's even broader than that: the Russians, Iranians, Syrians, North Koreans, maybe the Chinese to a lesser degree. The what Anne Applebaum talks about as autocracy Inc. Are all kind of getting together. Now, I've approached it differently than Greg, but we just decided let's compare notes because you were talking about this yesterday, and I found what you were saying intriguing. So I looked at it and I thought, okay, from Putin's perspective, anything that helps take the West eyes off of what's going on in Ukraine is good for him. That's a win. But it's more than that. So tell me what you see that's more than that. And let's just look at, a couple different directions.
Well, the first thing I wanted to validate, Prof, and it's nice to see you, is make no mistake about it. Russia is interconnected throughout um, Israel. They're connected through Hezbollah, through Hamas. They're partnering with Iran. There are relationships with China that are growing and
Hmm.
they will continue to grow. And we haven't even got to Ukraine. I
Hmm.
am a
Yeah.
firm believer that Russia, and I called it the Kremlin connection, is doing everything possible to distract the world from assisting Ukraine at a very valuable time in this process that we're now pushing 3 years in this full scale war. And we are coming to a place in certain areas. We know that Ugladar just fell, and it is strategically important. We know
Hmm.
that Ukraine has their initiative going in the Kursk region, and they are having some success. But I was sharing with folks the other day, there are about 120 glide bombs that fall on Ukraine every day, over 3,000 a
Hmm.
month. So Vladimir Putin, in my opinion, and the Kremlin connection is willing to begin to show some of their cards, some of their connections through their terroristic connections with Hezbollah, Hamas. I
Hmm.
discussed about Africa and the disruption down there with private military groups such as Wagner, and it is just blatantly obvious. The last graphic I showed was a man with his head in the sand. It's blatantly obvious that there is much more in play here than just the war in Ukraine and the what's looking like to be a growing regional war in Israel. And no doubt in my mind, they're connected.
So it seems to me like it's almost like Wagner, where they were like, we don't really exist, to no, we exist and we're here and this is who we are. That's what Russia has done with monkeying in other parts of the world, specifically around Israel, Syria, those kind of things. Like we knew they were involved in Syria and they were cozy with Syria, but before they were acting like it wasn't a thing. And now they're like, I'm happy to make it a thing. And I think that's, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's because the highest prize is Ukraine, and these other things are things that they would like to do, but they don't quite merit as high on their scorecard. Does that make sense? And so they're willing to do these, show these other things here because really what they are ultimately after is the prize of Ukraine. That would be the jewel of their empire.
Well, I was sharing. Number one, I completely agree with you. The value that is inside Ukraine, not only politically, geopolitically, but also just in the scale of natural resources, direct access to different locations of the world. I was actually showing the map, and I had the two black lines coming down, just showing the geographical line of disruption that's
Mhm.
happening right now in the world. And what I think is going on personally is a concerted effort to disrupt the world. It's at the prime time of the American elections. It is at a
Mhm.
time where Europe evidently is becoming a little bit destabilized. There are
Mhm.
different factions. We just saw the elections in Austria. They're going a different way than they've went in many years past. We're seeing the same things in Italy. We're seeing that in the Netherlands. We see a transition in the leadership for NATO. Mark Rutte is now the leader. Now Jens Stoltenberg is gone. There's a total transition happening in the world right now. And it's like a magician. You know, you have the art of look over here at what I'm doing while I'm actually doing something over here. But for
Mhm.
us, in complete agreement, anything that Vladimir Putin or the Kremlin can do to distract the absolute horror that's happening on the front lines in Ukraine is, I don't want to call it a win for them, but it helps their initiative in Ukraine and globally.
Okay, so if I'm reading this right, and you were talking about the connection with Syria and Iran and showing the map, and there's a reason that the Russians are dealing with the Houthis and that sort of thing. Okay, so that is all secondary, but the two prime objectives are one, Ukraine, and two, just general destabilization, general breaking the rules so that they can rewrite world order. I mean, that seems to be the second big thing. Like if they can get those two things, anything else that contributes to that is a win.
You
Is that fair
realize,
as well?
completely agree. You realize that
Right.
Benjamin Netanyahu just called out Macron by name 24 hours ago?
Hmm.
And I mean, by name.
Hmm.
We are seeing this is the tentacles of decades of work. Many of these
Hmm.
weapons that Israel is discovering in these Hezbollah tunnels, in layers, in bunkers, in storages, as they have done this minor incursion into Lebanon. And to be honest, that is what pushed me to go ahead and get this video out yesterday.
Hmm.
Discovering these things are validating
So
what
quickly
we see.
recap for those that haven't seen it. And if you're not a subscriber to Greg Terry's channel, go over and see at Greg Terry Experience to see what he was doing. But a quick recap.
Well, the recap is, and actually, I'll put the link in the video right now. You can see that I break it down, but there are Russian weapons dating back even to the 70s, the Soviet
Hmm.
Union, all the way up to modern time. 4 to 5 different types, different classes of weapons, from early drones the Soviet Union developed to different classes of RPGs, anti-tank weapons, and other technologies that Israel is discovering as they are pushing on this ground invasion. I then was trying to bring a validation and proof how the weapons got there potentially, where they came from, of course, through a third party, the primary candidate for that being Syria, where Russia
Hmm.
has over 100 military installations between substations and full blown military bases, 20 full blown military bases. On the video, I show
Yeah.
the map of that where they're located. And then I even bounced it off. We have the connection of Iran and the Caspian Sea and the free exchange of goods that are going there that are basically unchecked globally, other than spies and
Hmm.
secret organizations trying to keep an eye and watch like an eye in the sky. Nobody really knows what's happening in that exchange. I then layer on top of that, and it just came out yesterday, I believe, after I made the video, how much supply North Korea has given Russia. It's
It's
unbelievable.
it's crazy.
The volume of weapons. And I started talking about, and I tried to debunk the argument. Well, it's old Soviet stuff. It's 50% not firing. Well, that's 50% that is firing. It's still
Hmm.
mass quantity. But to focus in back to Hezbollah and Syria and Russia, many of the weapons that they are discovering in southern Lebanon on the ground incursion are 100% Russian manufactured.
Hmm.
I showed the
That's right.
pictures of them. And the reason we call out Syria specifically is that Rice drone system, only
Right.
publicly known, Syria was equipped with those, and they're finding those in Hezbollah hands. So
So
it's
what
obvious.
So what did the Russians get out of this, and what did the Syrians, Lebanese, Hezbollah? Let's take the second one first because that's an easier question. Hezbollah, Syria, Iran, uh, uh, whoever else hates Israel and wants to destroy Israel. What do they get out of the connection from Russia, and then what does Russia get out of their side of the bargain because they're getting something? What do you think?
Well, I think they get weapons, they get prestige, they get smoke and mirrors, they get the rhetoric, they get the propaganda. Can you imagine being on the inside of a meeting between some Hezbollah leaders and some Russian military leaders? And the Russian military guys are going, listen, we will supply you. You keep the pressure on there. We will send you RPGs. We will send you anti tank. We will send you drones. We will supply you. Look at the mass of our country. Look what we're doing. Look what we stand for, standing
Hmm.
against that West and that ideology. So you know that they're pumping that. I mean, that's what I would do. And then, of course, if you are looking and you're hungry for weapons, and obviously in that war torn region right now,
Yeah.
Hezbollah is hungry for weapons. We know that in general, Hezbollah is basically a proxy of the Iranian government. And we know that that is an open supply of weapons and technology.
Yep.
But let's be honest, I have to take us out of the United States right now. Let me take us out of the
Okay.
United States. Let me even move us out of Europe. Let me take you now to the Middle East. I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East and I've spent a lot of time in Africa. A lot of
Hmm.
time. I've been working there very intently for 10 years now. And I can tell you that the two controlling nations, and we'll just use Africa, is Russia and
And
China.
China.
When
Yep.
you are inside Africa and you are talking with Africans, they do not talk about the United States. They do
Yep.
not talk about the European Union and NATO. They talk about, man, there are so many Chinese businessmen here. And then they say, I saw this Russian military convoy the other day. That's what they talk about. So there is a
Hmm.
prestige that we know is not real. We know
Yeah.
it's smoke and mirrors, but in that Middle East and African, that straight down that black line, straight and take that all the way down into the African continent, you have, okay, it's Russia. It's Russia.
Yeah. So what does Russia get out of this? Force projection or uh, I owe you one or just some kind of good graces with the people's groups or what do you think?
Well, Russia, of course, is not going to gain anything that will help them in the war in Ukraine. And you know that you and I, that's our primary focus here to support Ukraine. But what Russia gets is further destabilization. We can
Mm,
take this, I don't want to go there, but into the American political system, especially now with a
mhm,
lot of the MAGA narratives that are going on that I completely stand against 100%. I am a conservative. I am a Ronald Reaganite, but a lot of these MAGA narratives, a lot of the things that Russia is getting is just a little boost in the arm. They're getting like a booster
mhm,
shot for some of their narratives, and it can be anti-Israel, it can be anti-Ukraine, and it can be, most importantly, anti-West. The rally right now is to break the relations between the East and the West. It was just 3 to 4 days ago where China and Russia did their joint announcement that we will be grooming our economic and our personal relations over this next year, moving into 2025. I
mhm,
personally believe that Russia right now is looking anywhere that they can gain some type of material advantage.
mhm,
And that can be not only in supply, and of course, Hezbollah can't supply them, but Iran can, North
mhm,
Korea can. And when Russia is just stirring the pot and they keep the world destabilized, and you hear yesterday Benjamin Netanyahu calling out Macron by name, I assume, and I would, if I was a betting man, I'd almost bet money. Vladimir Putin sitting at his desk going, ooh, I'm liking this. I'm liking
mm,
this. Let's break these relationships. Let's break these relationships. And I personally believe that's what they gain most. You know, if you go back to 1984 and we began to learn about the four stages of destabilization that were happening in the United
yeah,
States. And the first one was where they would infiltrate our nation with propaganda and mentality. And over time, it would begin to break down the narrative. We can call it the narrative that we have in the West. And time over time, I personally believe this is just another step to break down any type of cohesiveness that we're finding with the West, in the United States, the European Union, and Israel.
Yeah, it's also fascinating to me that it's the West against Russia and its thinking, China and its thinking, the Arab world and its thinking, like all these guys are all coming together along this spectrum of authoritarian kind of thinking against Western democracies all simultaneously. It's a fascinating thing to watch. But there's no doubt in my mind that there is a connection between Russia, at least Iran, and perhaps Russia directly to Hezbollah, although that might be a secondary connection. And of course Syria, they love Syria. I mean, these are all connected, and we've got to recognize that that's actually what's at play, because that helps us understand the bigger picture and what's going on between the war with Russia and Ukraine.
Perfectly stated, and that's where I wanted to direct my reply to you was, do you realize we're now talking about it? Just think about that for
Mhm.
a moment. We're now talking
Yeah, that
about it.
even we are
We're
having to
talking about it.
pivot and talk about this. That's brilliant. Yeah.
That's my point. It's smoke and mirrors. It's distraction. And do I believe the war in Israel is going to escalate? Absolutely. There's no question. If you do not think that somehow, at some point, in some time, Israel will respond to Iran for that mass missile strike a few days ago,
Mhm,
it's going to happen. It's going to
mhm.
happen. If they say it, they're going to do it, much unlike other nations who will promise things and then not do it. They will do it. But the world's
Yep.
looking at it. In fact, Professor Gerdes, this morning I was up and I had to make a trip to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania today. So I've been gone away from the home and the studio all day, and just got back actually a little while ago, and we were planning to do this evening. And this morning, as I was drinking a cup of coffee, I was on my iPad and I was scanning through the headlines. And when I do that, I have a pattern I go through. I go in no particular order: Fox, CNN, MSNBC, news.yahoo.com, news.google.com. I then start looking at Sky News, and
Mhm,
I look at Jerusalem Post. I look at BBC. I try to get a wide view of what the world is talking about on that day.
mhm.
And I literally, God is my witness, I'm sitting there going, I need to go live right now. I want to go live right now, title the program, read the news with me this morning. And if I had not had to go to Pittsburgh, I would have done that, because for the first time, and I'll give you guys a hint here. Out of all those websites I listed, the place where you will find typically the most information about Ukraine is actually news.yahoo.com. They cover it more than any other website. And I look at it every day, just like that, every morning.
Hmm.
Out of all those sites I just listed, this morning, I saw one story on Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean,
One.
it's being crowded out, and I think there's an agenda to that, and I think that's and what Putin wants most is Ukraine, and so it's making us go, "What? What's going on over there?" And yep.
That's why I I'm confident that he has no concern that Russian weapons are being found in tunnels
Mhm.
under the ground, whether it's in Gaza, where they have been found months and months ago, but now in larger quantity in southern Lebanon. We're talking significant quantity, and proven, validated, photos, videoed, Israelis there taking the pictures, and I mean it's newer stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so this one was a little bit stronger and more important, but in my opinion, he doesn't care, because it's accomplishing the purpose, and that purpose is just take your eyes and move it from target to target to target to target, meaning, let's look at Ukraine a little while, and then we're going to go look at Israel
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
while, and then,
So
oh, we're going to look at China, India, Iran, but we're
So now,
not
so now
focused on
that
anything.
puts us
Yes,
in a
sir.
little bit of a dilemma then. So we have to cover it, but we also have to remember to keep Ukraine in focus here as well. And I cover other events naturally just because I'm trying to look at a bigger picture and how things connect. But it really has been top heavy in the last couple of days on Israel, Lebanon. The connection between there is just, it's like glaring. But Yeah, we need to make sure we don't drop the ball on Ukraine in the process while we're trying to cover the connections.
Well, I can commit to you that we will not. I know I will not,
Mhm.
and I know you will not, and I know our other partners and YouTubers that we partner with will not. But I would caution our viewers, um, when you begin to see us talking about different topics and you're going, hold on, why are you changing on me? I come to you to learn about Ukraine. Why are you changing on me? We're not changing on you.
Yeah,
When, for me personally, and I know Prof, when we begin to talk about other topics, I'm trying to do that to show you that there is a global connection. You know, for
yeah,
the first couple of years of this war, the rest of the world was really quiet. We were in the middle of President Joe Biden's term, years basically 1, 2, and 3, or 2 and 3 specifically. And then election season started as normal. And we have full blown focus on that. Now we know that in a month or so, we'll have the election with between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and we'll see what happens there. And the world's focused on that. We then see the changes that are happening in Europe, and all of these things, as they begin to take focus, Vladimir Putin, in my opinion, finds ways to accentuate those narratives by doing other things. But his purpose is, first and foremost, to take Ukraine and to take that eastern Ukraine. And in some places they're doing well, in other places they're doing not. But as we move into the third year of this war, now the election's going to get passed. We're going to get through this fall season, and the world could return to this big focus on Ukraine like we've seen for the first couple of years. And until that happens, and I believe it will, until that happens, and mainstream media gets back to their responsibility to share with the world what's going on, I hope that happens. But if it doesn't, we will share, we will teach, we will
yeah, yeah.
educate, we will translate, because the story will not go away. Because as you and I both know and agree, this is more than just a war in Ukraine. This is
Sure.
a war
Yeah, there
eastward.
are Russian narratives coming out about the port strikes on the East Coast in the United States. I'm hearing things about or seeing Russian troll kind of stuff about the hurricane that just went through and how, the people of North Carolina just aren't getting the support because like that's being amplified. I know that's Trump was saying something, but they were amplifying that same kind of rhetoric
That's
as well.
and that's what
And
I
so,
caution people on. That's I really caution people to make sure you understand your sources.
mhm,
And if you do not have a trustworthy source, you're better off not to share that story, not to
mhm.
share that tweet, because many times, without even knowing it, you are sharing a Russian propaganda narrative. And you say, well, I'm not doing that. I'm just sharing a little story on Twitter. My dear friends, I have been in the state capitol building with our elected senators and House of Representative members over the last 24 months, meeting on Ukrainian topics with them. And they have point blank told me and the others in our group to our face that Russian narratives are on the House floor every day. Every day they're there. They're disguised, but they're there. So we have to be careful. Check your sources. Make sure that you're sharing accurate information, because if not, and I know right now it's so heated in the United States because of the election, and we're being
Mhm.
divided more every day, but make sure you're not sharing Russian narratives. And I try to encourage people on my live streams, if you're not building up, you're tearing down. And we need to
Mhm.
focus on bringing people together and building each other up.
That's right. Well, hey, man, I don't want to take too much of your time. Thank you for your thoughts and sharing that. And if you're not a subscriber to Greg Terry's channel, it's at Greg Terry Experience, and you'll find a wealth of information and understanding about Ukraine there. All right.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, Greg.
Prof. I appreciate
Yep.
it. And by the way, if you're here and you haven't subscribed to Professor Gerdes' channel, I highly recommend it. He's really smart, even if he doesn't have the sweater vest on today.
Well, I don't yet. It's too hot in my state right now. I mean, I know it's fall, but I'm still walking outside and sweating.
Uh,
So long about November, the sweater vests come out and they stay till February, March, something along those lines.
I can't
So
wait. In fact,
anyway,
you know, when we get to that season, we're gonna do a joint sweater vest stream.
oh, you have a sweater vest.
I
I'm
do, and a
impressed.
bow tie, and a bow tie.
Wow, I like bow ties too. That
Let's
works.
go.
All right.
All right,
We're
have a good
digressing
evening.
though.
All
All
right.
right. We'll
Good
see you.
night, everybody.
Bye-bye.